Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The CIA Intelligence Analyst, Views from the Inside. Edited by Roger Z. George and Robert Levine. Narrated by Bob Johnson and Linda Jones. Forward. Long overdue, this book on the CIA's analytic work fills a significant gap in the intelligence literature, most of which focuses on espionage and special operations. In part, this gap stems from the stereotypical image of a lone, desk-bound analyst. That image is misleading in its implicit slighting of how analysts drive and participate in intelligence collection, work collaboratively to interpret incomplete and often inconsistent information, and support the nation's most senior civilian and military decision-makers. As this book demonstrates, there is much to understand about the complexity of the CIA's analytic operations. There is a danger in overgeneralizing about intelligence analysis, given the wide range of disciplines needed to provide a complete picture of an issue, the unique types of analytic challenges inherent in those disciplines, and the fact that analysts practice their craft for a wide range of customers in Washington and around the world. The agency refers to those who use analytic products as customers or consumers. Analytic support for Ukraine and the alliance that backs it displays political, military, economic, technical, and other disciplines in the most serious type of international engagement. Some observers describe the CIA's Analytic Directorate as a kind of university whose faculty covers the full range of disciplines. The size, academic qualifications, and subject matter expertise of this analytic cadre support the claim that it could staff a major university, but there are important distinctions. Each discipline has its subject matter experts who must respond quickly and briefly to a select audience of senior civilian and military leaders who wrestle with momentous decisions on U.S. national security. Each expert conducts varying types of analysis using tailored methodologies and multiple sources of information, including sensitive and sometimes very limited access, classified intelligence reporting. Moreover, CIA experts often must attempt to bound the range of uncertainty facing decision-makers. While some officials are themselves foreign policy specialists and experts in their own fields, many are generalists who must rely on the CIA and other intelligence community analysts to understand the intricacies of foreign weapons developments, the internal political dynamics of closed societies, or the broader downstream consequences of technological or economic developments. As a senior reviewer of products going to the President and his senior advisors, I could cite many examples that highlight the critical importance of integrating deep, substantive knowledge and insights of analysts from distinct disciplines. One memorable case involved an unusual construction site in Syria. Our nuclear and weapons technical experts assessed this was a clandestine construction of a nuclear reactor, discussed in Chapter 5 of this book, that ultimately can alter the region's military balance. Included in the assessment was the analysis by political analysts on Syrian President Assad's likely calculations in undertaking a program whose discovery risked strong international reactions, first and foremost from Israel. Rigorous editing and review helped to prepare CIA senior leaders who briefed the key elements of this assessment to the senior U.S. decision-makers. That briefing proved critical to the White House's decision on this issue. The contributing authors of this book shine a much-needed spotlight on the nuts and bolts of the agency's daily analytic work. They are among the finest senior analysts that I had the privilege of working with during my own agency career. As a former Deputy Director of Intelligence for Analytic Programs, briefer for the President's Daily Brief, and Deputy Director of one of the CIA's mission centers, I saw their products and their impact. Their review of the analytic process and challenges underlying the agency's analytic work also helps explain why the Directorate of Analysis continues to play a vital role. The expertise and analytic rigor provided by agency and intelligence community analysts are even more critical in a digital age when misinformation and disinformation reach global audiences. Whether scholars of intelligence studies, teachers of intelligence analysis, or students curious about the nature of analytic careers inside the intelligence community, listeners of this volume will gain a unique inside look at the CIA's world of analysis. Peter Clement, Columbia University, School of International and Public Affairs, former Deputy Director for Intelligence for Analytic Programs, CIA. Preface. This book, like many, has its origins in the editor's previous professional careers. Both of us were CIA Intelligence Analysts with doctorates in international relations or policy analysis, and we had common experiences in teaching intelligence. We first met as Bob handed off to Roger the position of the CIA's faculty representative to the National War College in the summer of 2001. At a senior military service college, there was never sufficient reading material for sophisticated officers to help them understand, at a very practical level, how intelligence analysis operated within the U.S. national security enterprise. Stories of espionage and technological wizardry were abundant. However, we needed to explain the nexus between intelligence assessments and national decision-making. Since then, we have observed that classification in the rare practitioner writing about analysis has kept that bookshelf nearly empty. Surveys of national intelligence tended to lump all analysis together, as if they covered it at all. Few textbooks mentioned the various analytic disciplines, and none explained how discipline-specific analysts did their work or why that mattered. If anyone needed an illustration of how important these disciplines can be, we would point to the war in Ukraine that was occurring as this book was written. A full range of analytic disciplines is on display. At the outset, no doubt some political and warning analysts at the CIA were reporting on the Kremlin's plans and demands, while others were probably assessing how the Ukrainian government, neighboring states, and others farther afield would react. Military analysts, of course, would be describing Russian force preparations, mobilizations, and deployments, assessing the two sides' perceptions, intentions, and capabilities, and tracking and assessing the two sides' operations and strategies, focusing on their strengths and vulnerabilities. Leadership analysts were likely attempting to describe Vladimir Putin's state of mind, past behaviors, and the origin of his twisted narrative about Ukraine never having been a nation. Volodymyr Zelensky's potential for leadership success or failure as a wartime president was surely addressed. As the West responded with sanctions, CIA economic analysts would be assessing the impact of those on a wide range of Russian financial and commercial operations, like oil production, not to mention the collateral impact on European economies dependent on Russian energy exports, and others dependent on wheat exports. Less obvious would be the role of the CIA's counterintelligence and cyber analysts, who would be watching for Moscow's security services' use of social media and cyber weapons to spread chaos within Ukraine, aimed especially at its economy and defenses, and to weaken resolve among Western allies. Finally, Putin's hints about using tactical nuclear weapons would send U.S. officials asking the CIA's science, technology, and weapons analysts about the Russian nuclear capabilities and about warning indicators of such weapons movements or other readiness measures. The pros, cons, and means of expanded intelligence sharing with Ukraine and the United States-led coalition of allies also required in-depth analysis. The Ukrainian crisis resurfaced the need for analytic work on areas that may have received less attention in the past, but clearly called for renewed attention. Political and economic analysts would have examined how much of the Ukrainian population would lose access to electricity, safe water, and heating. What would be the number of refugees, how they would leave threatened areas, and where they would go, with what support and imposing what burden. Science, technology, and weapons analysts would focus on threats to nuclear reactors subject to attack or isolation and their safe maintenance. Other technical analysts would concentrate on other industrial facilities that could pose environmental threats, such as the unintended release of chemicals. Such examples of discipline-specific work are merely the most obvious ones. A full inventory of possible intelligence questions that the disciplines at the CIA might address in just this one conflict are too numerous to list. However, it underlines the importance of distinguishing among the different types of analysis, as well as acknowledging that there must be collaboration across them to produce the best picture of a complex international crisis. Moreover, close attention to these discrete analytic disciplines will also illustrate how analysis is conducted in each and reveal similarities and differences in methodologies and tradecraft that analysts use in the different disciplines. The editors hope that this volume will begin to fill that bookshelf with useful descriptions of the range of analytic disciplines and the conduct of analysis in each that are essential if the CIA is to continue providing comprehensive coverage of major global events that have implications for U.S. national security. As mentioned, the paucity of books on analytic disciplines and their techniques is partly the result of the necessary classification of sensitive CIA publications and operations. However, this project was possible only because of the diligent work of the CIA's Pre-Publication Clearance Review Board. This board staff reviewed draft materials and worked with the contributing authors to ensure that these chapters could be published without the inadvertent exposure of sensitive sources and methods. 1. Introduction. Building Analytic Disciplines. Roger Z. George and Robert Levine. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, has been portrayed, in mind-bending contradictions, as sinner and saint, omnipotent and incompetent, the nexus of national security and irrelevant. The agency has carried out clandestine operations that penetrated foreign powers' most closely held secrets, has engaged in covert actions that upheld or overthrew distant regimes, and has developed breakthrough technologies that met Isaac Asimov's third law, proclaiming that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It has also failed on more than one occasion to carry out its most important mission, to warn national decision-makers about critical threats and persuade them to take preventative or ameliorative action. The literature on the CIA's activities, both popular and academic, understandably is focused on such dramatic developments, events, and outsized personalities. Often, former CIA directors or senior clandestine officers craft gripping "I was there" narratives. The stories are captivating, but they are far from complete. Behind the scenes, a large cadre of analysts, who are experienced subject matter experts, play a critical, seldom discussed, and poorly understood role in piecing together incomplete and contradictory information. A singular revelatory clandestine report makes for a great movie scene, but reality is a far more complex landscape. What is often overlooked is that when President Harry Truman established the CIA in the late 1940s, he was primarily interested in getting a comprehensive set of intelligence assessments from a single agency, rather than being inundated with separate reports coming from all parts of the government. Hence, the concept of the Central Intelligence Agency was born. This was intended to emphasize this first task of compiling reports from military officers, diplomats, and spies, and distilling them into a single assessment that a busy president and his closest advisers could read. Attention to analysis, however, remains little understood or appreciated. Few listeners have any idea how analysts sift through voluminous reports, meet with sources or foreign intelligence officials, or brief presidents and cabinet officials on urgent events around the world. This book is designed to begin filling this gap. As such, it introduces the listener to the world of analysis and its many disciplines, as seen from those inside the CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia. Of course, there is a rich intelligence studies literature on the intelligence policy relationship and numerous scholarly works on past intelligence failures, which involved poor collection and/or analysis. This is not that kind of book. Instead, this volume demystifies how analysts do their jobs and operate with other colleagues in the CIA and the broader intelligence community. The book examines how they form partnerships with those who collect the unclassified and classified information upon which they depend, Importantly, it also provides more real-world examples of the roles that analysts play in conveying their assessments to policymakers. The contributors to this book also illustrate to the outside listener the unique organizational culture that motivates CIA analysts and how it interacts with the separate cultures found in other parts of the agency, the larger intelligence community, and the policymakers whom they serve. Analysts as enablers. One of the contributing authors to this volume has written elsewhere that the analyst is the connector between the collection of raw intelligence reports and the policymakers who need to get the vital information and insight that is contained in them. This role makes the analyst essential in several ways. First, analysts must assess an individual report to determine its veracity, including whether the information is from a credible source and is correct, timely, and relevant to U.S. national security policy. Second, analysts must combine those individual raw, unevaluated reports into a more complete description and assessment of the issue. That is, they produce what is called finished intelligence that can enable policymakers to reach informed decisions on an important policy issue. Third, analysts must simultaneously be asking those collecting information to seek out additional data to fill in gaps in the analyst's understanding of a target country or issue. While evaluating this information, they will often meet with outside experts as well. As analysts interact with policymakers to get their feedback on finished intelligence reports, they will get additional questions or tasking that will generate new requirements, requests for information, for collectors. In other words, the analyst is also the essential enabler to get policymakers' need for information satisfied by the collectors. This sounds simple. However, we can assure you it is not. Obviously, analysts must serve a wide set of decision-makers. The policy-making community is far larger than simply the president and his closest advisors. To be sure, what distinguishes the CIA from other parts of the intelligence community is its special focus on serving the President and the National Security Council, NSC, which is written into U.S. law. However, the CIA also considers itself the one agency that must provide global coverage to all the major national security agencies. Thus, its mission is to support the work of those serving in the Departments of State, Defense, Homeland Security, Justice, Treasury, Commerce, and many other federal agencies. The CIA's customers may be the Secretary of Defense, an NSC staff member, a military commander, or an ambassador serving overseas. Necessarily, their intelligence requirements or needs will be very different from each other. So, CIA analysts writing on any given topic will find that each customer will need more tailored forms of analysis. The chapters in this book provide individual analyst perspectives on what it is like to work with both collectors and policymakers, and they highlight the rewards and challenges such relationships can offer analysts. However, to make this comprehensible, we first briefly describe the intelligence community, in particular the collection environment where analysts operate, as well as the policymakers' world that they strive to support. Working inside the intelligence community. The CIA has the distinction of being the only intelligence agency of the more than a dozen that is not part of or responsible to a single government department. This fact also contributes to its own self-image as being unique, as well as both central and autonomous compared with other intelligence units within large departments, such as the Department of State or Department of Defense. The CIA's role is also more multifaceted than most other intelligence community agencies. It is the principal collector of human intelligence, HUMINT, and it contains the largest cadre of national all-source analysts. In addition to these two core missions, the CIA is the executive agent for managing the open-source enterprise, which is the major collector of unclassified open-source intelligence, OSINT. The CIA is also responsible for detecting foreign counterintelligence, CI threats to the U.S. government. Finally, but in the forefront of many movies and novels, the President has given the CIA the primary responsibility for conducting covert action in support of his or her foreign policies. What is critical to understand is that CIA analysts can be involved directly or indirectly in all these missions, be it HUMINT, OSINT, CI, or covert action. CIA analysts are part of a large organization in which there are multiple directorates, mission centers, and subgroups within those. The four key directorates are the Directorate of Analysis, DA, the Directorate of Operations, DO, the Directorate of Science and Technology, DS&T, and the Directorate of Digital Innovation, DDI. An additional component, the Directorate of Support, provides critical financial, logistical, technical, and other assistance to operations and analysis. Each directorate has its own leadership, recruitment and promotion system, and, accordingly, organizational culture. Most analysts serve in the DA, where the organizational culture is driven by the need to produce exceptionally rigorous analytical work and serve the senior-most policymakers, like the President and NSC advisors. Part of becoming an all-source analyst involves learning the analytic tradecraft, that is, analytical methods and writing style, that is taught and practiced throughout the DA. The Directorate of Operations is typically described as the heart and most powerful part of the agency. It operates far-flung overseas stations that are responsible for some of the most sensitive intelligence gathered by the intelligence community. In the field, the chiefs of station, COS, are the equivalent of an ambassador or military commander in directing the activities of all those serving in his or her station. Those station chiefs are also considered the senior, in-country intelligence official among all other U.S. government officials, who is responsible for managing the intelligence relationships with foreign intelligence counterparts. Even though the intelligence business traditionally involves competition with other government security services, today the DO must work cooperatively with many foreign intelligence services to gather the best information. This principle was established early in World War II, when the United States joined forces with the intelligence services of the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. This so-called Five Eyes group has been the model for multilateral intelligence cooperation and continues to this day. With all these responsibilities for overseas collection, liaison relationships, and covert action, the DO often sees its work as more important than that of other elements of the CIA, including its analysts. Nevertheless, some DA analysts serve in the DO to provide direct support to their operations and to help vet DO sources. One of the most direct functions analysts can play is in supporting the DO's responsibilities for managing its overseas relationships with foreign intelligence services. This is known in the intelligence business as liaison. For analysts, it often means meeting with a foreign government's intelligence analyst as part of formal analytical exchanges hosted by the DO. This benefits both the analysts and operators. The former get their analysis critiqued and are exposed to alternative views, and the latter earn credibility with the host liaison service in allowing their services to hear the views of the CIA's experts. Rounding out the list of analytical partners inside the CIA are the DS&T and DDI. The Directorate of Science and Technology also contains analysts and other technical experts who specialize in both assessing key foreign technology developments but also building unique technical devices, including covert communications and disguises, to aid collection efforts. Finally, the newest Directorate of Digital Innovation has collected a wide range of skills previously spread among other directorates so that it can concentrate on developing very special digital capabilities for collecting against and countering foreign cyber operations. So, in each directorate, there are analysts of various types working against separate sets of targets. Often, there must be collaboration across the directorates when, for example, a technical collection operation run by the DO needs the assistance from analysts found in the DA, DS&T, and/or DDI. One agency, one mission has become the motto of the CIA, even if it's not practiced as often as everyone would hope. As a CIA analyst, one must understand not only one's own role in the CIA, but also how an analyst fits into the broader intelligence community. Therefore, a good analyst will learn how the various collection disciplines operate. how does the U.S. government collect overhead imagery and produce geospatial intelligence? The proficient analyst will know how to put in requirements for tasking satellites and other platforms to collect information on key military, economic, counterterrorism, and many other targets. They will also know the capabilities and limitations of the various types of intelligence, known as INTs. That analyst would also know the single-source imagery analysts working on these targets at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. In a similar fashion, the National Security Agency, NSA, is collecting voluminous electronic signals, SIGINT, in the form of foreign missile test data, telephonic transmissions, satellite communications, and foreign internet traffic. So, CIA analysts need to know the kinds of information they can expect to receive daily, as well as how to task those systems. Obviously, because the CIA is the principal human collector, every analyst working on a country or topic would be wise to have a working relationship with collection management officers, CMO, sitting in the CIA's Directorate of Operations, DO. These CMOs, formerly called reports officers, are the ones who receive clandestine human reports from overseas stations and prepare them for release to all source analysts within the Directorate of Analysis, DA, and to other intelligence community analysts. For CIA analysts, these CMOs are the ones who can help enlighten them about specific sources, including their strengths and weaknesses and their credibility for reliability and accuracy. In turn, analysts can give a CMO updated collection requirements in hopes that some sources could report on those topics. Finally, it is common knowledge that for most analysts, the bulk of the information at his or her disposal will be open-source materials in the form of speeches by foreign leaders, scientific reports, or current news items in the foreign press that the open-source enterprise must collect, translate, and disseminate to every analyst across the intelligence community. Thus, the typical analyst's electronic inbox will daily include a stack of SIGINT reports on conversations or weapons tests, diplomatic reports as well as clandestine DO human reports on political developments, or open-source news reporting on a country's economic prospects or a recent election. This is the raw reporting, out of which analysts will build a variety of assessments, depending on the topic, its complexity and sensitivity, and time horizon. Before analysts can even begin to prepare reports, they must assure themselves that the facts and data they must work with are accurate, timely, and relevant. As mentioned, they must have a good grounding in how human and technical intelligence works, and how to evaluate the quality of this intelligence. The editors of this book have both had experiences working with collectors. While there are senior collection managers called National Intelligence Collection Managers who operate at the strategic level of working on collection strategies and assigning resources, it is the analysts who know the details. As a National Intelligence Officer, one of this book's editors chaired a regular human collection meeting where analysts provided him with a detailed report card on where this kind of source reporting was strong or where there were gaps. National Intelligence Collection Managers now chair those meetings, but they must rely heavily on the analysts who work directly with the reports and know how useful they are. Likewise, this book's other editor had occasion to support the then CIA Deputy Director for Collection, Charles Allen. It was Allen who admitted that he had to rely heavily on the cadre of analysts, as he did not have the time or energy to be knowledgeable on the capabilities and actual use of the intelligence community's many collection platforms. These analysts became experts on collection by serving rotational assignments at the National Security Agency, where they worked side by side with SIGINT analysts, or they had similar assignments in the DO, where they sat next to the collection reports officers. Analysts thus remain critical enablers for gathering the best information possible. Analytic production. Regardless of an analyst's specific discipline, there are 4 general types of intelligence assessments. The first one, that will be familiar to most people, is a type that was at one time referred to as current intelligence. Although that term has fallen out of favor in the intelligence community, it captures a critical stream of analytic production. One of the bread-and-butter tasks of analysts is to track developments in their account, their regional or functional area of study. When noteworthy events occur, analysts produce short products that report and explain the events, while DA analytic standards push analysts to do more than merely report events, that is, to explain why they...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?